The sky was filled with smoke and fire. The ground shook again and again as heavy machines moved across the battlefield. The city, once full of life, was now only broken walls and burning towers. Human soldier Markel pushed forward, his body heavy and his breath short. His uniform was torn, and blood ran down his arm where a blast had caught him. Every step was painful, but he forced himself to keep moving. Markel had been separated from his unit when enemy drones swept through the ruins. The rest of his team had pulled back, but he had not been fast enough. His orders were simple: return to the safe zone, but he could not move as quickly as he wanted. His ribs burned with every breath. He pressed one hand against his wound and used the other to hold his rifle. The air was filled with strange sounds. Metallic wings of drones, distant roars of machines, the crash of stone falling from broken buildings. In the middle of all this noise, something small reached his ears. A cry, high and weak. At first, he thought it was only the sound of the ruins shifting, but then it came again. It was not stone or metal. It was a child. Markel froze. Every part of him told him to keep moving. Soldiers in war zones did not stop for unknown voices. Yet his legs would not carry him away. The cry came again, thin and full of fear. He turned and followed the sound, moving into a side street full of rubble. There he saw it. A small Vulpine child trapped under a broken beam of steel. Her fur was dusty, her eyes wide with terror. She was no older than 7 years, her small hands pushing against the beam that was too heavy for her. Around her, fire burned close, and smoke made the air hard to breathe. Markel's heart tightened. The Vulpine were not human, but he saw no enemy here. He saw only a child. He dropped his rifle to the ground, gritted his teeth against the pain in his side, and bent down. The beam was heavy, far heavier than his injured body could manage. His wound screamed at him as he pushed. Sweat ran down his face, and his arms shook. But slowly, the beam lifted, just enough for the child to crawl out. She looked at him with wide golden eyes, unsure if she should run or stay. Markel lowered the beam and leaned back, gasping. His vision blurred for a moment, but he steadied himself. "It's all right," he said, his voice rough. "Come here." The child hesitated, then moved closer. When she reached him, she held onto his torn uniform with trembling hands. She was shaking, but there was trust in her small grip. Markel knew he had a choice. He could leave her, try to make it back alone, and maybe survive. Carrying her would slow him down, and he was already weak. But looking into her frightened eyes, the choice was no choice at all. He lifted her carefully into his arms. Pain stabbed through his side as he stood, but he refused to let it stop him. The child clung to his neck, pressing her face against his shoulder. Markel picked up his rifle with one hand, balancing the child in the other arm, and started moving again. The streets were more dangerous now. Enemy drones buzzed overhead, searching for movement. Markel pressed himself against broken walls, moving from cover to cover. He kept his breathing quiet, though each breath was sharp with pain. The child stayed silent, holding him tightly. Explosions shook the ground as he moved through the ruins. Once, a wall collapsed behind them, sending dust into the air. The child whimpered, but Markel whispered, "Stay calm, I've got you." His voice was firm, steady, even as his own fear rose. He remembered his training. Humans were taught to fight, to survive, but more than that, they were taught to protect. This was what made them different. He carried that truth with him now. The journey across the city felt endless. Every corner could hide danger, every open street could mean death. Markel's wound grew worse, blood soaking into his uniform. Still, he did not slow. The child needed him, and he would not let her down. At one point, an enemy scout drone spotted them. Its red eye flashed, and it gave a sharp metallic cry. Markel ducked behind a wall just as a blast hit where he had been standing. He leaned the child against the stone for a moment and fired his rifle with his free hand. His shot struck true, and the drone fell in sparks. The child looked at him with awe, but he only shook his head. "We need to move." He picked her up again, and together they moved through the broken city. At last, after what felt like hours, Markel reached a half-collapsed tunnel that led toward the edge of the battlefield. It was dark, but it offered cover. He stepped inside and sank against the wall, his strength fading. The child sat beside him, her small hand holding his. For the first time, he allowed himself to rest. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the silence inside the tunnel. Outside, war still raged, but here there was only the sound of the child's steady breathing. He looked down at her. She had fallen asleep against his side, her face soft and peaceful despite the ruin around them. Markel felt something shift in his heart. He had not only saved her life, she had given him a reason to keep fighting, to keep moving. The battle was far from over, and he was still bleeding. But now he was not walking alone. He carried hope in his arms. And with that thought, he tightened his grip on his rifle and prepared himself for the next step of their journey. Markel's legs ached as he carried the Vulpine child through the ruined streets. Each step was heavy, each breath sharp with pain, yet he refused to stop. The child, Lyra, still clung to him, her small hands wrapped tightly around his shoulder. Her golden eyes flickered with fear every time a distant explosion shook the ground or a shadow moved across the debris. She had never seen war like this. Her world had been peaceful, full of forests and small villages, until the machines came. Now everything was broken. She leaned her head against Markel's chest, feeling his steady heartbeat. Somehow, it made her feel safer than she had since the attack began. "Don't be afraid," Markel whispered, his voice hoarse. "I won't let anything happen to you." Lyra blinked up at him, too young to fully understand his words, but old enough to sense their meaning. She wanted to say something, to ask why he was helping her, but she could not find her voice. Instead, she squeezed him tighter. They moved carefully. The streets were littered with rubble, and smoke from burning buildings stung their eyes. Every step was a test of balance. At one point, Markel stumbled, a sharp pain shooting across his side, and he nearly dropped Lyra. She cried out, and he gritted his teeth, adjusting his hold to make sure she was secure. "Almost there," he told her. "Just a little further." Hours seemed to pass as they crawled and ran through broken tunnels, jumped over fallen beams, and slipped through alleys choked with dust. Markel's mind was focused on one thing, keeping Lyra alive. His own pain was constant, yet he pushed it aside, refusing to let it slow him down. Lyra began to notice small details in her surroundings. The way Markel moved quietly, always checking behind him. The way he kept his rifle ready, even when he looked exhausted. She realized he was not just carrying her, he was protecting her. Something about him made her feel brave. "Are you hurt?" she asked finally, her small voice trembling. Markel shook his head. "I'm okay," he lied gently, not wanting her to worry. "Just a little tired." That's all. The truth was far worse. Blood still ran down his arm and stained his uniform. Every movement made him wince. But he did not let it show. He could not let her see fear. She needed hope, and he would give her all the hope he had left. As they moved, Lyra tried to help in small ways. She pointed out loose rubble, whispered warnings when she heard distant footsteps, and guided him through hidden paths that only someone small and nimble could find. Markel realized that she was not helpless. Even in the middle of chaos, she had a keen mind and a sharp sense of survival. "You're clever," he said, giving her a small smile. "We'll get through this together." Lyra smiled faintly, feeling proud. For the first time that day, she felt that maybe they could survive. The bond between them began to grow, not just of protector and protected, but of two beings who depended on each other. Suddenly, a distant roar echoed through the city. Markel froze. He could hear heavy footsteps approaching, machines clanging on broken metal. The enemy had spotted them again. He pulled Lyra closer, pressing her small body against his chest. "We have to hide," he whispered. He scanned the ruins and spotted a half-collapsed building with a narrow doorway. They slipped inside. Dust filled the air, but inside the walls offered safety. He leaned against the crumbling stone and caught his breath, feeling the weight of exhaustion. Lyra sat beside him, trembling, and reached out to touch his hand. "Will they hurt us?" she asked quietly. "No," Markel said firmly. "Not while I'm here. I promise." The truth in his eyes gave her comfort. She had seen soldiers who cared little for others, but Markel was different. He moved with patience and carefulness, not just with weapons but with the life in his arms. That small kindness made her feel safe, even in a world of chaos. Time passed slowly. Outside, the war raged, but inside the ruined building, there was a brief moment of peace. Markel used it to tend to his wound as best as he could. He tore a strip of his uniform and pressed it against his side to slow the bleeding. Lyra watched quietly, fascinated by the strange rituals humans used to survive. "You're very brave," she said softly. Markel looked at her, surprised. "I'm just trying to do what's right," he said. "You're brave too. You've been helping me without even knowing it." Her ears twitched in surprise. She had never thought of herself as brave. Humans were the fighters in stories, the ones who went into danger. Yet Markel saw courage in her small gestures, in her guidance, in the way she faced the fear around her. For the first time, Lyra felt that maybe she could survive. After a moment, they left the building, careful to avoid patrols and drones. Markel carried her across streets that had once been lively markets, now only skeletons of walls and twisted metal. Every step was a careful calculation, balancing speed with safety. By evening, they reached a partially covered alley, away from the main battle. Markel set Lyra down gently, letting her rest while he watched the sky darken with smoke and fire. The city looked even more destroyed as night fell, but for a moment, they were safe. Lyra sat beside him, still holding his hand. "Will we find others?" she asked. "Yes," Markel said. "We will find others. And we will survive. Together." The child smiled faintly, trusting him. She had seen death and fear, but in Markel, she saw hope. She realized that not all humans were just soldiers. Some could carry a small life through the fire of war and protect it no matter what. Markel looked down at her, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. He was injured and exhausted, but he could not let himself think of surrender. She depended on him. Every drop of his strength belonged to keeping her alive. The night was quiet for a moment, filled with distant echoes of war. Markel held Lyra close, feeling her small heartbeat against his chest. He promised himself silently that he would never let her be alone again, no matter the cost. In the heart of the ruined city, two lives clung to each other, connected by trust and courage. One was human, wounded and bleeding, yet unbroken. The other was Vulpine, frightened but learning to hope. Together, they moved forward, step by step, into the uncertainty of the war-torn night, each finding strength in the other. Markel knew the road ahead would be harder than anything he had faced. But for Lyra, he would face it all. And she, in turn, would learn that courage comes in many forms, and sometimes it shines brightest when a small life is saved by an unlikely hero. The war did not sleep. Even under the darkened sky, the echoes of explosions and distant shouts filled the air. Markel tightened his grip on Lyra, carrying her through a street lined with twisted metal and shattered buildings. Each step was slow and careful, but he did not pause. Every second counted. Enemy patrols were close, and every shadow could hide danger. Lyra held onto him tightly, her small hands gripping his uniform. Her ears twitched at every sound, her golden eyes wide with fear. She wanted to help, to run ahead, but she knew she could not keep up. She trusted Markel, even though she had never seen a human act like this before. His determination gave her courage. Markel paused behind a crumbling wall. Smoke and sparks rose from a nearby building. He could hear the mechanical hum of enemy scouts scanning for movement. The children of her species, Vulpine orphans he had heard about, often hid when the machines came. But Markel refused to hide. He refused to let Lyra's small life be another casualty of war. He whispered to her, "Stay quiet. Watch me. We move only when it is safe." Lyra nodded, pressing herself against his chest. Her small heartbeat was steady against his side, and it gave him strength. Even as his own wound throbbed, he felt the courage of the child in his arms. Together, they were not just survivors. They were a force, fragile yet unbroken. Markel scanned the ruined street ahead. A fallen archway offered a narrow path. He moved cautiously, keeping low. Lyra whispered softly, pointing to a loose stone. He nodded and stepped around it. She had sharp eyes, noticing details that even a trained soldier could miss suddenly. A whirring sound grew louder. One of the enemy scouts had spotted them. Its red eye glowed as it hovered closer, scanning the rubble. Markel pressed Lyra closer to his chest, holding her so she could not be seen. He aimed his rifle, taking careful aim. When the drone fired, he rolled to the side, firing back in a precise shot. Sparks flew as the machine crashed into the debris. Lyra's eyes widened, both in fear and awe. "You saved me," she whispered. Markel smiled faintly despite the pain. "We save each other," he said. "Now move, we cannot stay here." They ran through narrow alleys and broken tunnels. Lyra guided him through secret paths she had memorized from her days before the war. Small tunnels beneath collapsed buildings, hidden doors in walls, places no adult would think to check. Her knowledge kept them ahead of the enemy, and Markel realized how important she was. She was not just a child to protect. She was a partner in survival. Hours passed as they moved from one hiding place to another. Markel's injury slowed him, but he adjusted, using careful steps and quick thinking. Lyra helped him when small obstacles blocked their way. She pushed rubble aside or pointed to safer footing. Even in the middle of terror, the child's cleverness amazed him. They reached a ruined plaza, once a place where people gathered, now a battlefield of broken statues and shattered fountains. Markel placed Lyra gently on the ground for a moment. "Keep low," he said, scanning the area. Enemy troops were moving across the plaza, their armored legs clanking on the stones. Lyra crouched behind a fountain, watching him. "Will they see us?" she asked. "Not if we move carefully," he replied. "Stay close, stay quiet, and we will get through." Markel picked her up again, holding her in a way that protected her from fire and flying debris. As they crossed the plaza, he remembered his training. Human soldiers are taught to think creatively, to use the environment to their advantage. He led them through broken walls, ducking under fallen beams, and used shadows to hide their movement. An explosion shook the plaza, throwing dust and debris into the air. Markel shielded Lyra with his body. When the dust cleared, he looked at her face. Her eyes were wide, but she did not cry. She trusted him completely. That trust gave him renewed strength. Pain still tore through his body, but he moved forward, faster than before. Suddenly, enemy scouts appeared ahead, blocking their path. Markel crouched, thinking quickly. He could not fight them all and carry Lyra safely. He looked around and saw a narrow ventilation shaft along the side of a collapsed building. "Follow me," he whispered, moving quickly to the opening. Lyra wriggled into his arms, and he slid into the shaft. It was dark, tight, and dusty, but it was safe. Inside, Markel paused for a moment, listening. The scouts were searching the plaza above, unaware of their escape. He held Lyra close. "You're doing well," he said softly. "We are getting through this together." Lyra pressed her small hand against his chest. "I'm not scared when you are here," she said. Markel felt a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. Soldiers were trained to kill, to survive, and to obey orders. But human courage was more than that. It was also the choice to protect, even when survival was uncertain. Lyra had reminded him of that. They moved through the ventilation shaft, careful to avoid loose panels and sharp edges. Dust filled the air, but they ignored it, focusing on forward movement. Outside, the war raged, but inside this narrow space, they were only two beings trying to survive. At last, they reached a side street. Markel gently helped Lyra down. They crouched behind a broken wall, catching their breath. He looked at her face, seeing the exhaustion mirrored in her golden eyes. Even though she was tired, she had not given up. He admired her bravery. "We can rest for a moment," he said quietly. "But only a moment. We cannot stop too long." Lyra nodded, understanding the urgency. She had learned quickly that in a world like this, every second mattered. She had also learned that not all humans were like the soldiers who destroyed her village. Some, like Markel, would carry a small life through fire and protect it at all costs. The bond between them grew stronger with every step, every careful movement through fire and ruin. Markel realized that Lyra's survival was no longer just a duty. It had become a mission of the heart. He would not let her down. Not now, not ever. The night deepened, and the city's ruins seemed endless. Markel looked ahead and saw the faint glow of a bridge leading toward the edge of the war zone. It would be dangerous, but it was a path forward. He picked Lyra up again, holding her tightly. "We move," he said. Together, human and Vulpine child, they stepped out of the shadows, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their courage and trust in each other would guide them across the ruins, showing that even in war, life and hope could survive. The city ruins stretched endlessly, broken walls and shattered towers casting long shadows in the dim light. Markel carried Lyra through narrow alleys and crumbling streets. His wounds still burned, and every step reminded him of the pain, but he refused to slow. He could feel the child's small hands holding him tightly. She trusted him completely, and that trust was stronger than fear. Suddenly, movement appeared at the edge of a wide street. Markel froze, pressing Lyra close to his chest. A group of figures was approaching, moving carefully, scanning the ruins. Lyra's ears twitched, and her golden eyes widened. "Who are they?" she whispered. "I don't know," Markel replied softly. "Stay quiet." The figures drew closer. Markel could see that they were not like the enemy soldiers they had been avoiding. Their fur glimmered faintly in the firelight, their posture graceful and alert. Vulpine adults. Lyra stiffened, recognizing something familiar. One figure, taller and more commanding than the rest, stepped forward. Her eyes met Lyra's, and the child's small body shivered. "Lyra," the woman called, her voice sharp but filled with relief. The mother ran forward, ignoring the danger around her. Markel stepped in front of the child instinctively, his body blocking any harm. The mother stopped just a few feet away, scanning Markel's face. Her eyes softened as she saw the child safe in his arms, yet suspicion lingered. "You saved her?" she asked, her voice steady but full of emotion. Markel nodded. "Yes. I found her trapped under the debris and carried her through the ruins. She is safe now." The mother's expression changed from suspicion to gratitude, then to wonder. Tears formed in her eyes, but she did not move closer immediately. You risked your life for her?" she asked. "I had to," Markel said simply. "She is a child. No one should be left behind." The mother's ears twitched, and she stepped forward slowly. She studied him for a long moment, then spoke again. "Among my people, saving a child at great risk requires a life bond. You cannot simply walk away. This is the law of our clan." Markel froze. He had heard stories of the Vulpine traditions, but this was the first time he faced one. "A life bond?" he asked, his voice wary. "Yes," the mother said. "It means shared responsibility, loyalty, and protection. You saved my daughter. Now, you are bound to our family." Markel's mind raced. He had survived countless battles, faced impossible odds, and carried a child through fire, but this was different. He had never imagined being bound to someone by law and tradition. Yet he could see the seriousness in her eyes. This was not a request. It was a demand rooted in honor. I do not understand your ways fully," he said carefully. "But I will protect Lyra. I promise that." The mother's eyes softened slightly, but her stance remained firm. "It is not enough. A promise does not bind your life to hers. The life bond ensures she will never be without protection, and that you will not face danger alone. It is a sacred duty." Lyra's small hands clutched his uniform. She looked up at him, confused but trusting. Markel could feel her heartbeat against his chest. He realized then that the child's life was now intertwined with his in a way he could not ignore. The mother studied him closely, her golden eyes searching for truth. "Do you understand what it means?" she asked. "If you refuse, you dishonor both yourself and my child. If you accept, you join our family in life and in duty." Markel took a deep breath. His wound throbbed, his body screamed for rest, but he knew the answer in his heart. Protecting Lyra was not just about survival. It was about honor, courage, and the human choice to defend life, no matter the cost. "I accept," he said finally. "I will honor the life bond. I will protect Lyra and your family." The mother's expression softened completely. She stepped closer and reached out her hand. "Then it is done," she said. "From this moment, we are bound. You carry the responsibility of our family, and we accept yours." Markel nodded. He did not fully understand all the traditions yet, but he felt the weight of the bond settle over him. It was not a chain. It was a bridge between two species, a promise that human courage and Vulpine honor could unite. The group of Vulpine adults moved closer now, circling around Markel and Lyra. They were cautious but respectful. Their eyes showed a mixture of relief and admiration. Markel could feel their acceptance, not just of him, but of the human capacity for compassion and bravery. Lyra, still in Markel's arms, looked up at him with wide eyes. "You are my family now," she asked softly. "Yes," he said gently. "I am your family. We are together." For the first time since the war began, Lyra smiled. She had feared losing everyone she loved, feared being alone in the ruins. Now, she had Markel, and she had her mother. The bond connected them, giving strength in a world of uncertainty. The mother spoke again, her voice calm but commanding. "We must move. The war is not over, and our enemies are near. But together, we are stronger. You, human, have shown the courage of your people. We will honor that." Markel nodded, looking at the ruined streets ahead. He could feel the weight of his wound, the exhaustion in his body, but he also felt determination. He had carried Lyra this far. Now, he would carry the responsibility of her family as well. The group began moving carefully through the ruins, with Markel at the center holding Lyra. The mother stayed close, her presence calm but alert. The other Vulpine adults flanked them, scanning for threats. Together, they moved with quiet efficiency, each step a balance between caution and urgency. As they moved, Markel realized something important. He had faced many dangers, fought countless battles, and survived impossible odds. Yet this moment felt different. It was not just about survival. It was about connection, trust, and the choice to protect another life at all costs. The life bond was not a restriction. It was a promise, a shared courage that would guide them through the war. Markel felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He was no longer alone in the ruins. He had a family, and together, they would face whatever came next. The night deepened, and the city remained a dangerous maze of rubble and fire. Yet for the first time, Markel felt hope. With Lyra safe in his arms and her mother beside him, he knew they could survive. Not because the war had ended, but because they had each other. And in the quiet strength of the life bond, a human and a Vulpine family prepared to walk together through the darkness, ready to face the challenges ahead with courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable connection of trust. The night was heavy and silent, broken only by distant echoes of explosions from the city. Markel walked carefully, carrying Lyra in his arms. Her mother, Saran, moved beside him, her eyes alert, scanning for any sign of danger. The other Vulpine adults flanked them, moving with silent grace. The ruins stretched around them, dark and treacherous, yet Markel felt a strange sense of peace. Even with this peace, his mind wrestled with the meaning of the life bond. He had accepted it, yes, but understanding it was another matter. Among humans, bonds were chosen freely, often by friendship, family, or loyalty. Among the Vulpine, the life bond carried a weight he had never known. It tied his life to Lyra's and Saran's, creating responsibilities he could not ignore. What does it truly mean? Markel whispered to Saran as they paused behind a collapsed wall. His voice was careful, cautious. He did not want Lyra to hear the uncertainty in his heart. Saran looked at him, her eyes calm but firm. It means that your life is no longer your own. You share it with Lyra. Every decision, every risk, every danger affects her. And in return, she is part of your life, part of your responsibility. You are bound to protect her, and she will rely on you as her family. There is no turning back. Markel nodded slowly. He had survived countless battles, faced impossible odds, yet this felt heavier than any weapon or machine. His chest tightened. The choice to protect a child had been simple, instinctive. Accepting the life bond was a decision of the heart. Understanding it, living it, that was something else entirely. Lyra, sensing his hesitation, reached up and touched his cheek gently. You saved me, and now we are together. That is enough, isn't it? Her small hand and innocent voice reminded him why he had accepted the bond. It was enough to give him purpose. It was enough to show him that courage was not only in fighting but in choosing to care. They moved again, stepping carefully over broken streets and rubble. The ruins were full of danger, but Markel noticed how the life bond changed his perception. Every threat now carried more weight. He was not only responsible for himself. Lyra's life rested in his hands, and her mother's trust in him added another layer of responsibility. Do humans often carry such bonds? He asked Saran quietly. Humor flickered in her eyes. Some do, but not as binding as ours. Among your kind, loyalty is often tested by war, by friendship, by honor. But this bond, it is different. It is not about choice alone. It is about duty, courage, and the willingness to face all dangers together. Markel thought about it. In his life, he had followed orders, obeyed commands, and survived because of discipline and skill. But now he realized that true courage was not just survival. It was carrying a life through fire, through fear, and knowing that failure was not an option. Hours passed. The group reached a crumbling bridge, the glow of distant fires casting long shadows. The path ahead was dangerous, but it was the only way forward. Markel tightened his grip on Lyra, feeling her small heartbeat against his side. She had grown silent, exhausted from the journey, yet her trust never wavered. Saran spoke softly. The bond will be tested. Danger is near, and you must decide how far you are willing to go. You have accepted it, but you must live it. Protecting Lyra means risking everything. Markel nodded. He had faced death many times, but this was different. Now, every step carried the weight of responsibility, not just for himself but for a small life that depended entirely on him. He realized that strength was not only in the body but in the heart. As they crossed the bridge, enemy patrols appeared below. They had to move quickly. Markel scanned the area, using his training to find a path that minimized exposure. Lyra pointed to a gap in the debris that led down a safer alley. He followed her guidance, trusting her instincts. The bond between them gave them both courage. They reached the alley safely, but the sound of machines echoed behind them. Markel's heart pounded. Every step reminded him of the life bond. He could not afford hesitation. Lyra's life was tied to his decisions. Every action mattered. He found a small building with partial cover and led the group inside. Lyra leaned against his chest, breathing heavily. Saran examined the area carefully, ensuring there were no immediate threats. "You carry more than a child," Saran said quietly, looking at Markel. "You carry responsibility, honor, and trust. The bond is not easy. It will challenge you in ways you cannot yet imagine." Markel understood. It was not a burden he resented. It was a challenge he would face willingly. He had chosen to protect Lyra, and this bond made that choice permanent. It was now more than duty. It was loyalty, courage, and love combined. The night grew colder, and the group remained in the building, resting as best as they could. Markel cleaned his wounds, pressing torn cloth against the cuts, but he did not lie down. Lyra slept lightly beside him, trusting that he would keep her safe. Saran watched him quietly, acknowledging his dedication. Markel reflected on the life bond. It was more than a promise. It was a connection that gave him purpose in a world of destruction. The war could rage, enemies could hunt them, but this bond gave him a reason to continue. Courage was no longer only about surviving, it was about protecting what mattered most. He looked at Lyra, small and fragile, and made a silent vow. He would not fail her. He would honor the life bond with every action, every step, every breath. Danger could come, wounds could deepen, but he would not waver. The city outside remained dangerous, but inside the small shelter, human and Vulpine hearts beat together. Markel understood that the life bond was not only a test of courage but also a bridge between worlds. It was proof that humans could rise above fear and destruction, showing compassion and bravery even in the darkest hours. As dawn approached, the first light touched the ruined city. The war would continue, but Markel felt a sense of determination stronger than ever. With Lyra in his arms and Saran by his side, he would face the coming challenges. The life bond was not a burden. It was a source of strength, guiding him through the chaos with purpose, honor, and courage. Markel tightened his grip on Lyra and whispered, "We face this together. Always." Lyra blinked sleepily, pressing her face against his chest. "Always," she repeated. The bond was real. The responsibility was real. But so was the courage that burned inside a human who would carry a child through fire, through fear, and through the ruins of war. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale light over the ruined city. Smoke still rose from shattered buildings, and the distant echo of explosions reminded them that the war was far from over. Markel carried Lyra in his arms, moving cautiously through the streets with Saran and the small group of Vulpine adults. Every step was measured, every sound carefully listened to. Despite their careful movement, danger found them quickly. Enemy drones had discovered the bridge they had crossed the night before and were now sweeping the streets below. Their red eyes glinted in the morning light, scanning for movement. Markel froze, feeling the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Lyra's life was in his hands. Saran's trust rested on him. Every decision could be the difference between survival and disaster. "Stay low," he whispered to Lyra. She pressed herself against his chest, trembling slightly but silent. He scanned the rooftops and alleys for cover. The city had few safe paths left, but he noticed a narrow tunnel running beneath a collapsed building. It was dark and risky, but it offered a chance to avoid the drones. He moved quickly, ducking low to shield Lyra. Her small hands clutched his uniform tightly, and her golden eyes searched his face. "Will we be safe?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Markel smiled faintly, though the pain in his side made him wince. "We will be safe as long as we move together," he said. "Trust me. I will not let anything happen to you." The group followed his lead, slipping into the tunnel. The darkness was suffocating, and dust made every breath difficult, but it was safer than staying exposed. Lyra leaned against him, her small body trembling, yet she felt protected. Markel's courage gave her strength, just as her trust gave him a reason to keep moving. The enemy drones began to hover above the tunnel entrance, scanning the area. Markel realized they would not stay long before discovering the opening. He needed a plan, and fast. He scanned the area for anything that could help them. Broken control panels, loose debris, and fallen beams were all around. Markel spotted a pile of metal sheets stacked against a wall. "We can create a distraction," he whispered to Saran. "Cover the entrance with these. It might buy us time." Saran nodded, understanding immediately. Together, they moved the metal sheets into position, blocking the tunnel's opening. The drones hovered closer, their sensors detecting movement. Then, Markel triggered a small explosion from a leftover enemy device he had found the night before. Sparks flew, lights flashed, and the drones reacted instantly, turning toward the noise. "Move!" Markel shouted, carrying Lyra further into the tunnel. Dust and debris filled the air as they ran, but the drones were distracted. For a moment, they had a chance to breathe. Inside the tunnel, Markel slowed slightly, letting Lyra rest against his chest. Her breathing was steady, but her body still trembled. He looked at her, feeling a mix of exhaustion and determination. The life bond was more than a promise now. It was a test of his courage under fire, of his willingness to risk everything to keep her alive. "Do you know why I carry you through this?" he asked softly. Lyra looked up at him with wide eyes. "Because your life matters. Because your trust matters. Because courage is not just in fighting. It is in protecting someone who cannot fight for themselves." Lyra nodded slowly, understanding only a part of his words. Yet she felt the meaning in his tone, the truth in his eyes. She trusted him completely, and that trust was their strongest weapon. Suddenly, the tunnel shook. Another enemy unit had entered the ruins, searching for survivors. Markel pressed Lyra closer, scanning the darkness. Shadows moved ahead, figures creeping closer, weapons raised. He realized they had no choice but to confront them. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the approaching threat. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The Vulpine adults flanked him, ready to assist. This was no longer just about survival. It was about courage, loyalty, and the life bond that tied them together. The enemy patrol appeared, their armored suits gleaming in the faint light. Markel aimed his rifle, every movement precise. The drones above still buzzed, but they were temporarily distracted by the earlier explosion. The patrol did not expect resistance from a single human carrying a child. Markel fired carefully, disabling 2 patrol members with precise shots. The others hesitated, surprised by his courage. He moved forward, keeping Lyra safe against his chest, his body absorbing the brunt of danger. The Vulpine adults attacked alongside him, their agility and strength complementing his strategy. Together, they formed an unexpected force, human and Vulpine united in purpose. The skirmish was quick but intense. Markel's wounds burned, his muscles ached, but he did not falter. Every move was guided by the life bond, every decision made to protect Lyra. When the last enemy retreated, the group was exhausted but intact. Markel lowered Lyra gently to the ground. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with admiration. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it," he corrected softly. "Together." Saran stepped forward, placing a hand on Markel's shoulder. "You have proven your courage," she said. "The life bond is stronger now, not just because of words, but because of action. You risked your life, and you did not falter." Markel nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride and responsibility. The life bond had been tested, and he had not failed. More than that, he realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. They moved on through the tunnel, careful and steady. The city outside was still dangerous, but they had proven that trust, courage, and the bond between them could overcome even the greatest threats. Lyra stayed close, her small hand holding his, and he felt the weight of responsibility with every step. By midday, they emerged from the tunnel into a partially ruined district. The sun shone faintly through the smoke, lighting their path. Markel's wounds burned, but he walked with determination. Lyra's trust, Saran's acceptance, and the life bond gave him strength beyond what he thought possible. He glanced down at Lyra. "We will survive," he whispered. "No matter what comes next, we face it together." Lyra nodded, pressing her head against his chest. "Together," she repeated. And so, through the chaos and fire of war, human and Vulpine moved forward. The life bond had been tested under fire, and it had not broken. It had strengthened, proving that courage, loyalty, and trust could shine even in the darkest hour. Markel knew the road ahead would be even harder, but he also knew he was not alone. He carried not just a child, but hope, trust, and the unbreakable bond that connected them all. And that bond would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The ruins of the city were quiet now, though faint smoke still rose from broken buildings. The war had not completely ended, but the fiercest battles were behind them. Markel carried Lyra carefully, her small hands holding his uniform as they moved slowly through the rubble. Saran and the other Vulpine adults flanked them, alert but calm. The city looked different in the morning light, less threatening, and for the first time, hope seemed possible. Markel's wound had been treated by Saran, using herbs and techniques her people had taught him. The bleeding had stopped, but pain still lingered with every step. Despite this, he felt strong. The life bond had grown stronger over the past days, tested by danger and proven through courage. He realized it was more than a promise. It was a connection, a force that guided his actions and gave him purpose. Lyra looked up at him, her golden eyes bright. "Are we safe now?" she asked softly. "For now," he said. "The war is still around us, but we have survived the worst. We will keep moving forward, together." Saran spoke from beside them, her voice calm but firm. "The life bond is not just for survival. It is also about learning, growth, and trust. You, human, have shown courage and honor. Your actions have proven that the bond is real and strong." Markel nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The bond had changed him. He had carried Lyra through fire, faced enemies, and made choices under impossible circumstances. He had learned that courage was not only about fighting but also about protecting life, even when the cost was high. As they moved through a quieter street, Lyra noticed small signs of life returning. Plants grew between cracks in the pavement. Birds had returned to the broken trees. She felt a strange sense of peace, something she had not felt since before the war began. She pressed closer to Markel. "Do you think we will find more people?" she asked. "Yes," he said, smiling gently. "There are others. We will find them." and we will help them, just as we helped each other. The group reached a partially intact building, one that could serve as a temporary shelter. Markel set Lyra down gently, letting her explore a little while he rested. She moved cautiously but with curiosity, touching the walls and peeking into broken windows. Saran approached him. "You have carried her through the worst of it," she said. "Now, it is time to carry her into the future. The life bond is stronger than danger. It will guide you both." Markel looked at her, understanding the depth of her words. The bond was more than a rule or tradition. It was a connection that gave both human and Vulpine strength. It had guided him through fire and fear, and it would guide them toward hope and life. Hours passed as they rested, sharing what little food they could find. Lyra laughed quietly at small things: a bird outside the window, the way Markel's uniform was still covered in dust. Her laughter warmed him more than sunlight ever could. He realized that courage was not only in facing danger but also in finding joy in small moments, in keeping hope alive. By afternoon, the city outside seemed calmer. Markel stood and helped Lyra climb to a higher vantage point, giving her a view of the distant horizon. Smoke still rose from some areas, but light broke through, showing the possibility of rebuilding. "This is beautiful," Lyra said softly, looking at the sky and the ruins below. "Even after everything, there is still life." "Yes," Markel said. "Life is stronger than destruction. Courage and trust make it grow." Saran watched the two of them. "You have both learned something important," she said. "The life bond is not just protection. It is guidance, love, and shared responsibility. You have proven that humans can be trusted, that bravery can take many forms, and that families are chosen by courage and heart, not just by blood." Markel nodded. He realized how much he had grown over these days. He had survived battles, faced fear, and carried a small life through chaos. But more than that, he had learned what it meant to be responsible for another, to act with courage even when hope seemed impossible, and to trust in connections that transcended differences. Lyra ran to him, laughing. "We will face the world together," she said. "Yes," he said, lifting her into his arms. "Together, we can face anything." The group began moving again, leaving the temporary shelter behind. Their steps were careful, but they were filled with purpose. Each step was guided by the life bond, a promise made real through action, trust, and courage. The city was still dangerous, but they had learned that together, they could survive and protect each other. Markel looked at the horizon. The sun was rising higher, shining through the smoke and ruins. Light touched the broken streets, giving them warmth and hope. For the first time, he felt a deep sense of peace. The war had not ended, but he had found something more important: connection, courage, and the strength to carry life through danger. Saran smiled at him. "You have kept your promise," she said. "The life bond is now fully honored. You and Lyra are no longer just survivors. You are family." Markel looked at Lyra, her golden eyes shining with trust and admiration. He smiled gently. "Yes, we are family," he said. "And we will stay together, always." They moved forward, the ruins stretching before them, but each step was lighter than before. The life bond had transformed fear into courage, danger into purpose, and despair into hope. Markel carried Lyra through the city, not just through war, but toward a new beginning. As the day grew brighter, birds flew overhead, and small signs of life returned to the city. Markel knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but now he understood that courage, trust, and love could overcome even the darkest moments. The life bond had proven itself, stronger than any danger, and guiding them toward the future. He tightened his hold on Lyra, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. She smiled up at him, and he knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The city could remain broken, the war could rage, but their bond was unbreakable, and their courage would carry them through anything. And so, Human and Vulpine moved forward into the dawn, carrying not just life, but hope, trust, and the unshakable promise of the life bond. Together, they faced the future, stronger than any war, and ready to rebuild a world where courage and love would shine brighter than fear.